Hello YouTube, this is a really exciting moment for me for a bunch of reasons. I'm gonna explain and then I'm gonna also give him options of what he wants to talk about. But this is Taka. When I got into drifting around the 2002 to 2000 time period, he was one of the people, that I looked up to. He was the nicest person ever at the events. He was a professional driver that would let you chat with him and talk, and he would give you advice, one of the very few people. He was always so inspirational and friendly and approachable, and it was awesome. And he's one of the few people at that time period that's still around, you know, still doing stuff. Because you always felt like a guy that was doing it because you absolutely loved it. And then today we're at Willow Springs, which is one of the first places that I think a lot of us saw real American, like Japanese drifting with the Kazama Tsuchiya video where they're up on Horse Thief and Kazama's S15. So it's kind of a really cool place. He works here now, he teaches, he has a school, he can tell you about his school. He has a fleet of Corollas around the parking lot right now. And I wanted to ask him to either tell us a story about early American drifting, because you predate most of us. Okay. Or you can talk about how Corollas have gone through the time and how they went from originally like the enthusiast car to the, people struggled with them and tried to build them, and then everybody kind of finally gave up on them in Formula D and in professional drifting. And now they're just like a random hot boy car that people with, they're $20,000 now. Yeah. So when I'm in Japan, the only people that drive them are the dudes that have had them for 20 years and they can't afford anything else. But they're so cheap to operate that they keep having them. So you want to tell us about your school? Do you want to tell us a history story? What do you want to tell us about? You want to talk about Corollas?
Well, let's start with start with the Corolla.
Okay, talk about the Corollas.
Yeah, back in the days, let's see, like I would say before mid-90s, Corolla price start going down, right? And end of the 90s, it start hitting bottom end. And so you go junkyard, you see GTS Corolla everywhere. And
they're like $500?
Yeah, and you get a free car pretty much back in the days. Wow, cars like a Corolla, you want Corolla? That's how it goes, right? Then, let's see, around 2000, in Japan, initial D start, going through. But in the US, it wasn't that big yet, because they came out with a, like a Chinese translated version. They mess up the translation really bad. So it didn't make sense. But the real one came out, and then that's where Corolla price starts shooting up in the sky. Yeah, we used to pick up the Corolla for 1,500 max. Now went to 5, 6, 10, 15. After COVID, now it's like what, 20, 30s? It's not the car to thrash around anymore.
Huge shout out to all the sponsors of Drift Week, starting with BC Racing Custom Coilovers, who support more grassroots and professional drifters than any other coilover company. Thank you to WhatMonstersDo.com for supporting all of our content for so long, including our Japanese content. Use the discount code EBISU on their website for a discount. Thank you to NK Wheels. They make so much cool stuff, all the way from my drift wheels all the way up to F1 wheels. Thank you to ECU Master for supporting grassroots guys all the way up to the best driver in the world, James Dean. Thank you to Y-Play Imports. If you need a rad right-hand drive car from Japan, hit up Trenton at Y-Play Imports and get them before the prices get too high. And thank you to Drift HQ for bringing in that support vehicle. And congratulations on everything that you've been doing this year, Drift HQ. You are killing it.
And it's kind of bad that, this is a car you can run a lot. It's easy to go sideways, but to maintain sideways, you have to do a lot of basic training to make it happen. And
because they're no good at drifting.
No,
I'm joking. I just troll. I troll.
It's hard. It's hard. The problem is when you try to drive in the U.S. soil, usually it's a big place, and then require a lot of speed and power to keep going sideways, but this one doesn't have that.
When I was in Japan on Toge stuff, you're like, oh my God, this is tiny. Yeah. It is so small. It is so small. And then the cars, you start to realize like an S chassis is almost too big for some of the roads.
Exactly.
Yeah, right? So then those cars make a lot more sense,
Yeah, like it's made for K car pretty much, right? The Japanese road is. But here it's big. If you want to drift anything third gear, Corolla not gonna happen unless it's downhill. So
and then that'd be terrifying.
Yeah, it's sketchy. But and we use this car for the school. One is I want people to feel how fun this car is, not to just looking at it, but driving this car is fun. Try to go sideways, challenging. And beautiful thing about this car in the drifting, like low horsepower wise, it teaches you what is a mistake you made.
Because you can't recover.
Yeah, because once you make a mistake, it's obvious you go, right? So it gives you how important to manage the speed of the car and the wheel speed as much as you can. Anything over that, pretty much you're asking too much for the car. And those are hard to come by with a lot of the horsepower, because horsepower makes you easy on sometimes, but if you don't know what the mistake is, it's sketchy things. If you're really close to minimum wheel speed going by the wall, and if you lift the gas, you're gonna go into the wall because tire points to the wall, right? But this car, you run that from the beginning when you're running donuts. That's too low wheel speed. It's like really hard thing to come by nowadays, especially with the internet information. Everybody jump into LS, JZ, and VQ. Too much talk to learn how to do it right. So our school focus a lot more on how to manage the wheel speed, how to control the angle. Don't let the car do that angle job. You are the one adjusting angle for the car. And so on, yeah.
I was gonna say, a like modern kid that like jumps into drifting now in their first car is a V8 240SX. It's so easy to drive compared to these things.
Yeah.
I had a Corolla that was our carbon fibered out and Lexan glass everywhere, and like it was still hard to drive.
Yeah.
Like even like a full-on race car Corolla is still hard to drive. They're not easy.
Yeah, throughout my career, we started 2004 on the Formula D or 2003 on the D1. We started about 130, 140 to the wheel. And throughout the year, we always said, I need 50 more horsepower, 50 more horsepower, 50 more horsepower. And at the end of the time, we are pushing, well, it depends on dyno, but they gave almost 750 to the wheel.
Holy cow, in a Corolla?
Yeah. And
was it good?
It's not easy to drive. So like in the US, especially Formula D, they have a regulation against those live axle car. You cannot modify suspension attachment point. You can do whatever you want on the axle side. So our biggest problem is to gain the traction, we try to on purposely gain the anti-squat, so a car push forward, right? But the chassis was made for, 100 horsepower. And when you try to shove 18-inch with a lot of grip,
Probably starts ripping it apart.
Yeah, start ripping the frame off.
Wow.
So it happened in Washington, in the Monroe. When you try to initiate, car just doesn't want to go sideways. And when my crew chief checked under the car, it's like, hey, it ripped the frame off. And we grabbed Kevin Wells. He was technical director back in the day too.
Yeah.
And we asked him what the right way to fix this for the regulation. And he said, well, cut the floor from other car, locate it in the same spot at the original place, then you cannot make the thing stronger, because under the regulation you cannot.
It's just going to do it again.
Yeah, it happened twice. So to do that, I have to kill 2 shell to just move that one piece.
Oh man.
And that's when we said, well, under the Formula D regulation, this is it.
Yeah.
Because we can get more power, but
yeah, you're just going to tear the cars apart,
yeah.
and it's not going to work out so well.
So,
You're forcing it really badly.
yeah, and that time, about 2014, the year, everything started changing in the drifting style. So,
Thanks, Daigo.
not
Bringing all that power over.
Well, I really admire Daigo, his driving style. He can drive with big angle or small angle. He can go
Super
fast.
exciting too.
Yeah, and I really like his driving style too. So yeah, right. I think that's the time when we start ignoring like how fast we're going. It's more like how much tire smoke we make, how much angle we drive, and yeah, like the Long Beach itself. Like when we are competing back in the days, like 07, 08, we are getting about almost 75, 5-mile-per-hour going through under the bridge. Nowadays, the big angle, actually, we start slowing down. We hit about, how fastest we see is about 75, like with 1,000 horsepower. Back in the days, we were doing sketchy things. It's bare minimum wheel speed, try to go through that things. That was exciting back in the days. But it's a lot more getting to, let's say, spectator friendly. And that's where I think D1, Japan, and the US, the Formula D drifting style separated. It's kind of funny that the D1 use a machine to judge, so it doesn't, but at least at the same time, they have to have a actual judge. And the Formula D, they still use human eyes, which is kind of good. For me, like I totally understand what the judging call is, but of course, like people watching in the live feed, they don't like that, and it's go different style of drifting. It's really interesting. US create their own style of drifting, and it's good. But after all, we are going sideways, having fun, right? And I want people to be safe.
Safe.
Yeah. So not jump.
Says the guy going like down a chute of concrete in a 1,000 horsepower Corolla. I want people to be safe. Going back a minute about the Corolla stuff, when you went to like the Toyota Atlantic motor, you were one of the first guys with a Corolla that had like an open checkbook from Falcon and had like a Dream motor in the car. You were riding the wave of like craziness and drifting, where you had the most aggressive thing that you could possibly, like that is the God 4AG motor. There's nothing greater in a naturally aspirated 4AG that you can do, is there?
Yeah.
What was that like? Because I would imagine that was like the best thing that you could do in your brain. You didn't want a V8, you didn't want a JZ, you wanted that motor. What was that like? Was it good? Was it bad?
So let's see, if that engine's like 3 years before, that would be perfect. But the biggest problem that we encountered is the gear ratio, because the ordinary RPM calculation doesn't work. Power band start about 6,000 RPM and it revs to almost 12, like 11.8 I guess. And below 6,000, it doesn't do anything.
I remember you trying to do burnouts in Laughlin, I think, and the car was bogging. It couldn't do a burnout.
Yeah, and to do the burnout, you have to be above about 8,000 RPM. And I still remember one of the event that like our window, Tony Brachio Harper, back in the day, he was driving. I was doing burnout, and the engine sound pretty much like mute the V8 sounds.
Oh, your car was so loud.
Yeah.
It was insane.
And that was fun, but it's really hard to drive.
Yeah.
Because, in the
It's
pit.
like driving a worse turbo car.
Yeah, and then it doesn't give you that much power to begin with. So, let's see, in the pit, you have to drive at least 3,000 RPM to just move the car. And
Oh, because it doesn't idle at like 1,000?
yeah, well, and then there's no torque to move the car.
Oh, I
It's
see.
made it for the Formula car, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
So we always carry almost 6 to 8 different gear ratio.
Oh my God.
So
That's worse than now,
Yeah.
like the days.
then back like no quick change back in the day. So you just pick, and your air pressure goes haywire. The lowest in that car we run was English Town. It's a 25 psi. Highest we ever run was 90 at Sonoma, to make the car drivable. that was interesting day.
I remember asking you questions about air pressure one day, and you were like, higher. And I was like, it's at like 40, and you're like, higher. And I'm like, you can't go higher than that. You're like, you just kept pointing up to me. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. Thanks to Ravi Nishida.
Yeah.
He did a lot of research how much air pressure he can put. I think he went over like a 10 bar, so it's 140 psi. Then it explodes, I guess.
Yeah.
So, as long as your rim is good, you can go a lot higher than you think. But tire life gets shorter, so.
Yeah, they heat up fast.
Yeah.
So after the Hasselgren motor, what did you go to?
So we turbo that.
The same motor?
Yeah.
Was it good, turboed?
Yeah. The biggest torque we can make is about 300 foot-pound. But power-wise, if we are still revving to close to 10, I'm making 500. But it's kind of same thing. Now, like 2008, 9, 10, it's getting everybody start pushing more power. And until Daigo show up and show that the real power is, right? And the biggest problem we are encountering is tire size. So even if we have a 500, the torque is not enough. Then you really have to be busy with the shifting all the time. So then we decide to go the 4-cylinder, the same engine that the Kengushi used to run in the FRS, the TC in the beginning. Scion TC engines.
That was probably game-changing how much more torque that thing had.
Yeah. At the same time, the biggest problem we have is now engines getting taller and heavier, so they're loading front too much.
Oh.
And usually these things they behave really good when you keep the front 53% and the 47 in the back. That's somewhere on there, it works good. First year we tried it, they had about almost 55 to 56% in front. So it really, they could load it in the front easy. And it wasn't good to drive. And after we put bigger rear end and to run 245, we had to weight the car more. So, the Atlantic turbo end car, it weighed only 2200 with me in it. Then we want to go bigger tire, so we start taking out all the fiberglass part and start putting metal door, heaviest radiator you can find, heaviest battery you can find. That's how we went. Try to make the Corolla fat, and we made it to about 2500.
Was it better like that, heavier?
At least it moved the weight in the back. We did a rear radiator, so it was okay. But now we gain a lot more traction. And because of anti-squat, the hardest thing about anti-squat, the too much anti-squat, when you get on the gas, rear end push against the ground, so it raises the rear actually, and start driving like that. So it smoked the tire a lot. But the moment you take gas off, just a little bit, the tire suck into the body, and weight goes in the back actually. Then tire smoke disappears because tire is going away from the ground. And that's like the smoke is like tire smoke was really hard to keep creating. And my wife, spotter, say, "Hey, stop turning off the smoke switch," because suddenly you see no tire smoke and on smoke. And for the judges, it see like he's not committing. But most of the drifting car, when you take the gas off, you have a wheel speed, so you should still creating the tire smoke, and that was hard to control. That then ripped the frame off. So it's like, if you go like a Japan,
problems.
D1 series or European series, you can still modify the rear suspension attachment point on the chassis, then you can survive with more horsepower, but not in the US.
Yeah. I see a lot of guys like running S13 rear subframes and all kinds of stuff, but I don't feel like that's your style.
No.
What do you think the most joyful setup of your car was? Like, when were you happy driving it? What was the happiest you can make a Corolla? If somebody asked you, "I just want to be happy in a drift Corolla," what would you tell them?
It's hard because
You were never happy in one.
It's like depends on what kind of friend you have when you're driving together. So like if everybody's driving Corolla, any Corolla is fun, right? But if let's see one of your friends has a V8 S13, then damn, how do you catch up with that?
You don't. When I was driving my Corolla, I would wave everybody, like I would leave and tell them to catch me halfway down the straight, and then they would catch me halfway down the straight, pass me and enter. I would continue driving up to their door and then enter.
That's how
it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and
they definitely couldn't follow me.
Yeah, then they had those Need for Speed event that Formula D did with Snoop Dogg and whatever. So I was going against Alex Pfeiffer. We are good friends. He was driving RSR S2000. So we said, hey, let's make a show. I'm going to take off. You take off later. You pass me on the initiation, then I initiate. And that was fun. We are supposed to compete, but we are just having fun like that back in the days. But that's the reality is, hey, can I go fast? Then pass me. Yeah, right. So for that, Turbo Corolla is kind of fun. And the blue one over there, we made that to practice with other FD drivers like Audi, Dai, Ken, and we used to practice together here a lot. And so that we run 5-7 final. So everybody's driving fast, second, and maybe third initiate, and I'm going fast, second, third, fourth initiate, and down she third, second, fast, and that's how you drive Corolla with the power anyway. So that was fun.
Makes you good at shifting.
Yeah, and the clutch work too. Yeah.
So you had fun right around 150 horsepower then?
With
200?
Corolla people, yes.
Yeah, with Corolla people.
And I think up to, it's really fun about 400, but the car doesn't behave anymore same way like a Corolla does. You start setting up differently, and you try to aim.
Or you just drive it on torque and.
Yeah, and try to move the weight in the back and try to drive like that. Instead, the Corolla usually move like this, right? Yeah, but hardest thing for a lot of American people to understand, I guess, is the size of front tire. Imagine you give a lot of grippy tire in the front and try to drive a Corolla with a skinny on the back. It just rotates like a pendulum, right? Then you're gonna have tough time connecting the turns. Then you learn, you don't need that much grip in the front. So you start decreasing the grip. Then your actual rotation of that car, the axis start moving from front tire to the middle. That's how the wheel drive.
USA AE86 はその一見当たり前に見えるマシンスペックから想像できないほどの角度を維持。切り返しの素早さはご存知の通り。それはマシンが軽量ということもあるが、上尾自身の踏む、蹴る、回すなどの基本ドリフトテクニックが人並み以上に秀逸で、その複合技がスーパーテクニックに見える。手と足が見えるオンボードカメラで研究しよう。
Car move in the middle like this. Then you start connecting a lot more time than you used to not do. So every time I see Corolla people driving with, let's see RT 615 in the front and the throwaway tire in the back. It's like, dude, that's not right. Yeah, it's your technique to rotate the car, not the tire rotate the car, right? That's a thing we see all the time. That somehow we get those information, more tire in front is better in the beginner. That's not right.
I've driven a lot of people's Corollas where you just drive them up to the corner and just jerk the wheel, and that's it. And then you just counter steer a little bit and drive around. You're like, Feels like some type of like carnival ride.
Yeah.
Feels very weird. Doesn't feel like drifting to me.
Yeah, it's just sliding machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a kind of interesting. Yeah, because you used to drive a Corolla, so you know that.
I wouldn't call myself a Corolla driver. I
Yeah.
bought one as a comedy thing.
Yeah.
You know, because I just like it. You can't drive a Corolla without laughing.
Yeah.
Like it's not joy necessarily or something like that. It's actual comedy sometimes. It's so ridiculous because one, you don't drive like a normal car.
No.
It's completely different technique. So it doesn't necessarily translate. Like it's just, you're just having fun. It's just weird.
But you know, when you break into what you're doing against the car, it's actually, it correlates everything to what you do in any drifting car. So, Kawabata, the champion from Japan, he put it really good way. What the drifting is, you manage the weight transfer. So imagine your ball, the car is on the balance ball, and you try to move the weight where you want it. And most of the time, cars sit like this. And how you set up the car on the front gonna dictate how much rolling resistance you have. So like the Corolla is so light and so simple. Then you start doing naturally, and that driving style can match pretty much any car you drive.
Yeah.
Other than wheel speed, or you gotta get used to the power.
I was always overdrove Corollas. I'm sure you see a lot of people do that, where you're just like 15 clutch kicks because
Yeah.
it's funny and like you're just driving it like a comedy thing.
But like that, if you try to chase people seriously, that's how you learn. Like Corolla teach you a lot of things.
Are the new Miatas, have you driven anything that's like a Corolla that like brings you that same feeling? Because I kind of feel like all modern cars are like, I don't want to say they drive like Mustangs because they don't, but everything's heavy now, and everything has torque, and everything has steering which works but doesn't give you joy. You know what I mean about the steering? Like even when a new BMW or something steers well and it's easy to drive, it's still not. I don't necessarily want to say Corolla's made me happy driving, but like maybe I'm an S chassis man, so S chassis steering does.
Yeah.
But there's very few things, like I'm sure you're more into Corollas, so like you love the steering of a Corolla. There's nothing like that.
It's more like a quickness of the rotation and how the car set. And you can control that really easy on this because the rear is moving together, not independently. So let's see, when I jump in S chassis, it feels boring because it takes so much time to rotate.
Yeah.
So naturally, the good Corolla driver jumping S chassis, like Andy Yen used to be, when he jumping, we start seeing driving like fast time, like just transitions, like we start throwing it. Because rotation is so, no, actually it's like rotate slow. Like it's like, come on, S chassis, come on. That's how I drive.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so I was expecting the kind of sensation of this from FRS. First time it came out. My impression of the very first FRS is like, oh man, it goes sideways nice. And power feel and how it drive, it felt like S14, KA. So not power. Second gear drift good, but doesn't give you enough angle. But it drift decent, but it didn't give me the quick motion of the drifting.
I like driving those. Like I could drive a stock one with, 65 PSI on the tires and like it drives well. They just didn't have enough steering angle. Nothing ever does after you get used to a drift car.
It's amazing, right? Now, when that car feels so natural to go sideways, especially you bump up the air pressure, and to go good at
Yeah.
right, yeah.
I was gonna say, we all drive like big angle cars now, and going back to like a car without angle, you're just like, oh, this is what it used to be like. I feel like I'm about to die all the time.
Yeah, so like a lot of the Pro-Am guy ask me, so what do you think that nowadays like the Pro 2 driver is better than back in the day Pro 1 drivers? And the one thing we can say is, hey, we didn't have that much steering angle, 30 degree, 35 degree, and we rarely spin in road Atlanta. And that, try to drive the 30-degree, 40-degree steering angle car in road Atlanta, it's still coming like almost 80, 90 miles.
I drove all the way until I think 2008 or so. We didn't know knuckles existed in the U.S.,
Right,
like cut
yeah.
knuckles. I remember like some people getting them and you just like, oh, whatever, and you don't think about it. And then you'd borrow someone's car and drive it and you're like, oh my God. You're like, what have I been doing with my life? You're like, I've been almost dying all the time in tandem. Because you're always on the edge of the angle.
Yeah.
And you'd back off when things are going. And now it's just like, haha.
Yeah, see, you used to
easy
see the
drive.
view in this way, it's right around the mirror, and now you can see everything this way. And just, like, oh my God, I'm more than 90 degree, right? Yeah. It's a wonderful thing.
It is.
But at the same time, a lot of younger drivers rely on that too much. So when
also they've never driven a car with stock steering angle. Probably they don't know the terror.
When you are sitting in the passenger seat, right, on the initiation day, anywhere you see driver do this, and the car go all the way full lock, then you catch it. That's like.
Think about this. We used to all street drift with no working handbrakes, with no real knowledge of how to make an LSD work, with basically stock suspension, and with no angle, if I already said angle. But so I mean, we didn't have, all we did was clutch kick, I guess, and pray.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
But that's,
it was really bad.
Once you start from a nasty car like that, jumping into a better car, it's like, wow, that's easy.
Yeah.
But, it teaches you a lot of things.
It does, but when you're a new kid now, I have kids that play in a Seto, and then within their first event, they have like a Wise Fab 350Z or something like that. They're better than I was after 6 years of driving.
Yeah, back in the days, our information is so limited, right?
Yeah.
Option video, VHS, right? So your tape start getting longer because you repeat, try to see the same thing again and again.
And I only spoke English.
Yeah,
so it's
too
tough.
bad, man. I had the advantage because I understand Japanese.
We didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah, but those are the things. A lot of information is available. It's kind of good that it's easier. But when me, Moto, and other guys decide to start bringing drifting in the U.S., everybody has their own goal about drifting in the U.S., right? One of my things was try to make the grassroots big enough so that it sustains the professional. And now it's getting there. Back in the day, 2002, 2003, Formula D is here. Grassroots, it's skinny.
Yeah.
Now it's getting like this.
It is.
And a guy like you promote a lot of amateur drifting. It's a good thing.
It's very different.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Developing a lot. That's impressive, though.
I talk about this a lot in my videos. I think for the last 4 to 5 years, we've been in a golden age of U.S. drifting, just like the Japanese were between 2002 to 2010, or maybe even 97 to 2007 or something like that. We don't realize that we've been in it, but just like everybody was always jealous that the Japanese had super cheap S chassis and super cheap Skylines, for the past 5 or 6 years, we've had $5,000 Corvettes and 350Zs that were $2,000 and IS300s that are, $2,000 to $4,000. We've had crazy cheap cars, as cheap as they ever were in Japan. Right now we're in some weird wacky bubble, but we have had it so well. And not only that, I was just talking, it was so crazy. Maybe you know the guy. We had one of the guys that worked at HKS way back in the day that lived next to our Airbnb last night. He was telling us all these stories about when he worked at HKS America. We always looked at all the Japanese companies saying, oh, they have all the coilovers and all the cool turbo kits and all the tie rods and all the angle kits and everything. We didn't have that over here. Now we have way more than they do. Yeah. We have so many cool parts. We're just in a complete golden age. And now rolling into the next 10 years, we're like Japan is, where we're kind of screwed. There's no more manual transmission cars other than the FRS and maybe the Mustang. Is there anything else? I don't even know. Miata. Yeah. But I don't fit in them. I'm too big. There's very few cars that you actually want to drift. Corvettes aren't even manual transmission anymore. No. Used cars are crazy expensive right now, or just on the rise. Yeah. Man, we've had it so good for 5 years, and we're also seeing a lot of tracks close. I don't know.
Yeah, that goes with the economy too, I guess. And the Japanese economy is just going flat, right? It's not going this way. So everything was start getting cheaper, but at the same time, people are not getting paid good over there, so they cannot afford the car. One of my friends said, hey, like he saved up money to build the JZX 100, and after he saved up, he cannot even buy JZX 100 anymore. It's because
That's the American's
so
fault.
Expensive, yeah. So it's like I think eventually we might get there, but just like when we see JZX Touareg V is expensive over there, but Touareg S and the other grade is cheaper. So as long as parts are floating, we can still get automatic car and convert it to stick
They're
shift.
expensive. It's not cost effective because an R154 is $2,700, and you still need a clutch, a drive shaft, a whole set, and everything.
That's true.
Most of the time, it's not any cheaper to buy an automatic car and convert it because the parts are really expensive. Thank you,
Yeah,
car economy.
and labor is no joke, right?
No. Yeah, but I mean, we have to embrace the cars over here that we have, which makes sense in the time period. Like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, Corollas made sense. Now 350Zs, G35s. Used to be Corvettes a year ago, now Corvettes are expensive. Mustangs are still pretty cheap.
Yeah,
They're just not the cars you
like
want.
a tall car you like, the 350Z works, right? For me, the door is too high. Looks kind of cool if my helmet is just showing this part, but man, it's hard to see the object inside the car. But I see like a G35 350Z, but the problem those cars, the weight of the car, so tire. It's
Everything
a
is
tire,
more,
right?
yeah. So tell me about your school right now, real quick, to promote your school.
Okay, so we have a school called Drift School USA.
Okay.
It's
.com?
pretty, yeah,
Is that how they call
.com.
it? Okay.
Yeah, that pretty much we aim for more like a traditional Japanese style drifting. So we do a lot of basic training, but our basic is not just donuts and figure eight. Our basic is here in the balcony. You should be able to initiate third gear in this Corolla, so you understand speed is your friend as long as you can control it, and that's how we take it. And the key on our school is try to not have a bad habit and try to analyze yourself what you made a mistake is. So know that your mistake, then you can fix it. That's the idea. A lot of people when we try to run by ourselves, we don't know what you're doing. Car starts sliding, so it's good, but maybe it's not the right way to do it. If you do it right, it's a lot safer. So you buy the car, eventually you start driving by yourself, you know something's wrong with my driving. Before you start playing the car too much, you doubt yourself and go for the more seat time. Try to analyze what you're doing wrong. And that's things we try to teach people. And so when you come to our school, right, like let's see somebody jump in, they know how to drive, but first thing we're gonna ask is, hey, show me your donuts. If you're chopping gas, we said, no, right foot control the gas, but at the same time move the weight forward and back. If you're chopping like that, you don't know how to control how much gas you take. And we start from there. And that's how we do it. Yeah, a lot of technique and a lot of, theory behind why you have to do that. And we always recommend people to ask why you have to do that. If somebody asks you to do this, ask why question, not what you're supposed to do. If you understand why you have to do that for the dynamic mix of the car, then it starts making sense to you, then you have hope you can fix that. If you just fix what questions, you're not going to be good quick. Eventually you'll get there with the seat time, but seat time drifting is expensive.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
People can play on games now, though. It cuts down the cost a lot.
It's amazing when we got kids, right? And they just did the Sims and come here first time driving.
And they're good.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh my God.
You know why, right?
Why?
Because in a simulator, you learn how to use a vision. And we don't think about it, right? But the drifting, one thing special about drifting is not only spinning tire, but you have to manage the drifting angle all the time. And easiest way to manage the angle is use a vision to see the object and see where the object is against the car. Then you can manage the angle good. If that thing is moving like this, you're maybe spinning. If it's coming this way, you try to go this way, you're losing.
I never
grip.
thought about that.
So, see, once you master the vision, only thing you have to do is move the machine to make it look like that.
Yeah.
And to do that, you need a wheel speed. That's about it. Then you start catching, you don't have to steer that much. Then when we teach, the people should be able to donut with 3 fingers, even in non-power steering Corolla. Because your wheel speed is matching with where you want to go, the rolling resistance front. And you don't have to do it. If you're sweating doing donuts, you have a major problem, right?
Really out of shape.
Yeah. So the simulator works really good. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm amazed about it. And some people, I've been in drifting so long, I'm just going off on a tangent. We can end in a second. But I was going to say the biggest thing about simulators, and this sounds really dumb, but I would say between 2003 to 2015, my biggest problem as an event organizer was people coming out to their first and second and third event and the car breaking, and they never get any satisfaction out of driving, and they quit before they ever learn anything because they have no positive feedback. So they immediately quit, and you never see them again. And if they play a video game and they get all of the feedback and they're getting to the point where they can tandem and they can do everything, when they go to a drift event and their car breaks, they're not so desperate for seat time that they're, the anxiety of when your car would break when you went to an FD event or anything, you're like, you're only getting negative emotions from drifting. And these people get to skip that. I know you know negative emotions from drifting.
Yeah, a lot, yeah. I see. Yeah, I can see that because here, the kids coming here, they drive our car. We set up the car fairly well, and if something happens, we fix the car, so they don't have to worry about it. Now I can imagine those people come into with their own car. Yeah, I guess there's no reset button to fix the car, right?
No, but I mean, you get to the positive feedback loop sooner. And I think that we do probably retain more drivers now. Although I think 6 years ago, more people, maybe 10 years ago, more people were randomly trying drifting for the first time. I think we're at some type of peak back then where 240SXs and all these things were, Corollas were more popular. So anyone that had a Corolla at that time period that was into the Corolla scene tried drifting.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, and
I mean, it happens, but not in the rate.
Now we start seeing the parents pushing kids or kids pushing parents to come to our school. And because, thanks to YouTube and the internet, like your channel, they watch, they can access to drifting a lot more like naturally. You don't have to go in the canyon to see the drifting.
Yeah.
And that bringing them like into the field. And the kind of good thing is, usually, if kids are really serious about it, parents will support. But sometimes, some kids just want to do it, and it's not for them. Then they just come in and just taste a little bit and never come back.
Really? You have kids that don't care about drifting, do drifting lessons?
Some kids, they realize it's not for them because it's scary. The actual G-feet, and the out of controlness.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, we had a few of them too. And some people get car sick really easily.
Yeah.
And some people, we got quite few, Asian foreigners come to our school, not to drift, but drive A86.
Really?
Yeah.
They just want to drive it?
Yeah, and they, what they say is that they have in Japan, they can rent the car A86 and drive around. But it's not really push the car to the limit. And they saw it here. Yeah. So
you drive a classic car drifting school.
Yeah, and they jump in, they do some donuts, but they're happy. And they just don't wanna drive anymore. I'm okay. I just wanna talk about the Corolla. Okay.
Man, people like, it's so weird that people see these as iconic cars now, because back in the day they were $100 and
it's
in
a Corolla.
Everybody just got rid of them. And in early drifting, because I was an S chassis guy, we kind of made fun of them. Like I'm sure you remember that. Everybody like kind of crapped on Corollas.
Yeah.
And now they're worth more than S chassis.
Yeah.
They're objects of desire, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's the craziness right
I used to leave Corolla S chassis on the side of the road when they broke because I never put them in my name. You're just like, it's done, and you just walk away. I'm sure you did that with a Corolla probably.
It's like, oh wow, right? Find another one. It works,
So crazy.
Anymore, yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time. It's gorgeous out here.
Yeah.
I enjoy talking to you. You're always such a happy person, and you've been around drifting for so long. And
I never forget. First time Formula D went back to Texas, and when you are sitting on the judges station, I am a spotter station, looking at some of the pro-am driver. Is it Aaron? Yeah, sure. I was so happy you're still doing it, and then you're involved with amateur drifters, and now it's even bigger. So it's beautiful things. Yeah.
It's crazy how far all that goes back. Because I tell people stories about that stuff, and they're like, "You're old." They don't even care.
Yeah.
You're like, this used to be so hard. We didn't have hydraulic, like you couldn't buy a hydraulic handbrake. You couldn't buy parts. You couldn't buy an angle kit, you damn kids. What a world.
Yeah, man. And now we got white thing in the hair and everywhere. That's,
And YouTube replaced option video.
Yep, pretty much. Yep. Now,
oh well.
Yeah, option start having their own channel too.
I know, it's great.
Yeah.
I watch it sometimes, but it's not the same because it's like not in English and it's not.
Yeah.
And I never learned. I spend a lot of time in Japan typically, and I still cannot speak Japanese. I'll pick up little tiny pieces, but I mean, like, I'm so bad at it, and I can't string together sentences that, it's
a
difficult language.
I think the option gonna start coming in English because if they go worldwide, they get paid better, I guess. Yeah.
You would think so, but Japanese are stubborn.
Yeah, at the same time, it's the compliance things, right? In the option video, they do a lot of things you're supposed to not show in the video, but nowadays on YouTube, you gotta be careful, right?
Yeah, people do pretty crazy stuff. Yeah. I hope they don't go away.
I don't think so. It's
I
still
hope
there.
not. Do you go to Japan much?
No.
I go to Japan a lot and spend like sometimes a month at a time there. And the drifters are so old.
Yeah,
and
that's a problem.
Yeah, you cannot find option videos to buy anymore. Like when I first started going in like 2012 or whenever, you'd go to the grocery store and it'd be a magazine with the DVD
7-Eleven, you see it.
Yeah, you have all that.
Yeah.
This stuff doesn't exist anymore.
Because young people cannot afford the car anymore. They say like the government said like, oh, we have to make the young people more excited about the car. But hey, come on. If they get paid in a certain amount and the next 5 years the pay doesn't change, how they gonna make a loan out of it, right?
Yeah. Plus the cars aren't exciting like they used to be. The JZX and all these cars were like, I drive JZX sometimes. I'm like, I cannot believe these are 4-seater cars that sound like Supras. And, they were legitimately exciting cars that had passion in the engineering.
Yeah.
And they made no sense from the perspective of like, they're super inefficient. Like, what kind of person owns a turbo, like a twin turbo car where like, you pull those turbos off, they're a mess. That was a crazy car to sell to the public.
Yeah.
And like, they just don't do that most of the time anymore.
No. The Audi still like those things, it's gone. It's so tame. But that's how the Japan goes nowadays.
Yeah, it's all Nissan Leafs and
K cars.
Yeah, K cars and stuff. All right, let's go eat.
All right.
You want to come over and see our area of drifting over there?
We'll stop by.
Or you're like, I see drift cars all the time. I don't want to see this junk. All right, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.